my name is Laura and I am the Nerdy Needle. I'm actually really excited about a project that I am in the process of just finishing. I was looking through my stash of kits that I bought like 5-6 years ago, trying to find stuff that I'm still interested in stitching and thinking about how I'm going to get rid of the ones that I don't want to do anymore. And I came across a bunch of Mill Hill kits that I had bought, the buttons and beads kits. And when I returned to stitching about 8 or 9 years ago, I stitched a bunch of these things. I don't know if you've ever seen them. They're super cute. So here's one, and this is a Mill Hill frame that you can just buy separately. And these are all on perforated paper, and they're beaded. I think it's 14 count perforated paper. I have, like I said, I have a bunch of these, and they're really fun on just like a sideboard and wherever you can just display these. I mean, they're really, really stunningly pretty. And this one is on Ada. That one actually took a while to do. So I'm not going to show you all of them because there's a bunch more. But I have a bunch of these kits still. These guys. A lot of these kits. So I wanted to show you what these look like and then talk about my little dilemma that I had when I was looking at these and the solution I came up with. So I'm just gonna try to find one that I can open. So they come with everything you need, with all the floss and all the beads. And they always have like a really cute like novelty button. And of course the chart. And this is the perforated paper. So when I was looking at these a couple of days ago in my stash, I was like, you know, these are super cute, but it's perforated paper. How do I stitch on this now that I've learned to stitch two-handed? Because when I was stitching on these, I was doing poke and pull like this, right? Up, like pull through, push down, pull through. And that was fine back then, but now I have a Millennium frame and I'm really good at two-handed stitching. And I just didn't want to go back to poke and pull because it just takes longer. I mean, if you can stitch two-handed, you can stitch about twice as fast. So I thought, what do I do? What do I do? So there's a little bit of a confession to this story, and a little bit about me. It's hard to believe it's been, next year it'll be 10 years. I was in a massive accident. I was riding my bike up in Alaska and I got hit by a truck. I almost died. I had to get life flighted, yada, yada, yada. It was bad. It was really bad. Long story short, I had 8 surgeries, and one of the last ones, I unfortunately had a surgeon who turned out to be a raging misogynist, and he ignored my endlessly telling him that there's something really, really wrong after the surgery. He was too caught up in demanding that I smile and look pretty. I'm not joking. So he ignored everything I was telling him, and it was just all about, you just ought to look pretty. Why don't you smile? You're so much prettier when you smile. What I had was a red flag emergency. A nerve in my back was being crushed to death. I was in off the chart pain. They ignored it for 4 days. By the time they did surgery again, I had permanent nerve damage. So it's been really hard to live with because in the grand scheme of things, as far as like the amount of disability I live with, I would put that as a moderate, but it's so stupid. It is so stupid that because of misogyny, I am permanently disabled. So emotionally, you can imagine how hard it is to live with. To say that I carry a lot of anger doesn't even begin to sum it up. And one of the big issues that I have is nerve pain. And if you've ever known, or if you have nerve pain, you know how incredibly difficult that is to deal with and to treat. And after going through a whole series of medications and messes with all of that, I realized that I live in Oregon. And in Oregon, cannabis is legal. So I started using cannabis, and it was like someone turned the volume down on my pain. It's still there, but I can ignore it like 95% of the time. Like if I start focusing on my leg, I can start feeling it, but I can just block it out now. I've got unfortunately, a really high pain tolerance now. So I can just get by with being in pain all the time and just not really caring so much about it anymore. And a huge part of it is Mary Jane, cannabis. So anyways, how does this tie into Mill Hill kits? Well, I use a tincture only in the evenings, a relatively small amount, so it's not like I'm a stoner all day. I just use it to sleep, and the amount that I take is enough to control my pain for the next day. Even though it's not like I'm high the next day, it's just the pain relieving effects will continue on into the next day. So I took my evening dose, and I'm laying in bed, a little bit happy, and I'm thinking about these Mill Hill kits, and I'm like, I really want to do these, but that poke and pull thing really isn't doing it for me. And then I had an idea, because being a nerd and having worked in science for a long time, I'm a problem solver. I look at, some sort of situation, and I'll try to figure out how to fix that problem. And so I came up with a really good idea, and I can now stitch two-handed on perforated paper with a nice little setup that I will show you here in a sec. And so I cranked out one of these little Mill Hill kits, which is not, they're not, I'm not going to show you the chart, but they're about not quite 2,500 stitches, somewhere about between 2,000 and 2,500. So there are a substantial number of stitches, and there's beading, and this thing is like, I can get one of these done in like under a week now, because I can stitch on it two-handed. And so now I can, all of these kits that I bought, I can start stitching. So this is the one that I'm currently working on. And it is just absolutely adorable. Isn't that just the cutest thing you've seen? It is so much fun to do this. And I really like the fact that I get to do some beading. And it just went really quick. So I'm going to show you how I set this up so that I can stitch on it two-handed. And then I'm also going to show you something that I discovered about beading that you may or may not know. Mill Hill kits are the only place I've ever done beading, so I'm by no means an expert. But as I was working along, I kind of realized something, so I'll show you that also. So I'm going to switch the camera over and show you how this setup works. So this is what I came up with for being able to stitch two-handed on one of these perforated paper Mill Hill patterns. So I have one of these Loran chart holders. I actually use this on my Millennium frame to hold up my iPad. So what you do is you find a table and put this on the edge so that it hangs off the end. Then you need to get a piece of tape, and probably more than one piece of tape, and just tape it down so it's not going to move. So I would do it on the ends too. And then you put your perforated paper. These are one of those strong rare earth magnets, and you can just hold your paper like so. And what I was doing was I would just get it all the way out on the edge, and I would just stitch right here, and this is firm enough so that you can stitch on this two-handed, and you no longer have to do poke and pull. If you have a scroll frame already, you can use that instead of a table. What I did was I just flipped over the scroll frame and then use magnets to hold the magnetic board in place and stitch that way. That works well if you have a frame already because it's already set to the correct height for you. So here's my setup for this project that I'm finishing tonight. I actually use two kinds of magnets now. I use ones that are easier to pick up. These are rare earths also, but they're really tiny. And then I use these flat ones. The reason I like the flat ones is because these tend to catch your thread. The thing that's kind of annoying about the flat ones is that it's a little bit more difficult to move them. So I started compromising and putting the flat magnet on my dominant hand side. So this is where my thread's going to be. And then on the opposite side, I use one of the easier to pick up magnets. So let's talk about beading and something that I kind of realized as I was beading. Now, I did mention that I am not an expert beader. So maybe everybody knows this and I just figured it out. So anyways, I need to put these pretty blue beads on this channel right here, and it needs to be with a full cross inside of the bead. So I always make my X's from bottom left to top right as my first leg. So putting my bead down. And then, as I was stitching away, I thought, well, this is kind of convenient for lefties because when you put that first leg down, it's obviously going to lie along the direction of that thread on the inside, which is from bottom left to top right. And now that I need to put the second leg through, the opening for the bead and my needle in my left hand are oriented in the same direction. So this is an easy move. So what about for right-handed folks? So let's just do that again. So if you're a right-hander, you're either having to go this way or this way to put your second leg through. I mean, most people, when they make their X's, they go bottom left to top right when you're just doing straight cross stitch. So I'm guessing that this happens with a lot of right-handers. So there's a solution for that. I'm gonna just finish this. And it is kind of awkward coming down at that angle. So then I thought, well, you know, it doesn't really matter which leg goes first on the inside of your bead. Even if all of your cross stitch is bottom left to top right as your first leg, there's no reason why you can't reverse that if you're right-hander and go top left to bottom right as your first leg, only on your beading. If I can pick one of these up. Come on. And now your bead is oriented for right-handers. So now if you're putting that second leg in as a right-hander, the opening to the bead is oriented in the direction of your needle, and you're not having to do that whole contortion thing. So being a teacher, that's something that I was always thinking about is, you know, being a left-hander, I'm always having to automatically flip everything from a right-hander's world. But that's always a consideration when I'm thinking about my teaching is what if anything needs to change for right-handers? Do they have to flip it? And in this case, yeah, if you flip your order of your legs on your X inside of the bead, getting that second leg in is going to be a lot easier. So that's what my nerdy brain came up with for figuring out how to stitch two-handed on perforated paper, and it works great. So after I kind of came up with this idea, with my nerdy brain, my teacher brain started kicking in, and I started thinking, you know, these Millhill kits would be perfect for teaching beginners how to stitch, because you don't need a frame, you don't need a Q-snap, all you need is this magnet method, and you can learn how to stitch two-handed right from the start. And that's really one of the key things that makes stitching significantly more enjoyable, in my opinion, is being able to stitch two-handed, because it just goes a lot quicker and you see your results quicker. And so my teacher brain kicks in and says, well, why don't you put together a lesson plan and make a few videos on kind of walking through somebody who's an absolute beginner on how you can use one of these Millhill kits to learn your best practices for stitching. You don't really have to worry so much about getting the needle through the fabric because it's paper and the holes are really big. So you don't have to really deal with any of that. It's really all of the other stuff that really takes a pretty project to a spectacular project. You can learn all of that on these little Millhill kits. So I think that's what I'm going to do for the next several days, is come up with a detailed lesson plan and actually make some videos walking beginners through how to use these Millhill kits. And by the end of this video series, I think a beginner would be at the point where they could pretty much pick up any kind of Ada pattern that they want, and they can stitch to their heart's content and get spectacular results right off the bat. So that's kind of my plan, and I was really excited, so I decided I'd share this all with you. So if you have somebody in your friends or family who you're looking for a Christmas present for, and if they've shown any interest in learning how to stitch, this might be the way to go, is to get them one of these Millhill kits and point them towards my videos and say, hey, you know, this lady is going to teach you how to stitch, and by the time you're done with this, you're going to be able to do larger projects, full coverage, that. And I kind of got the way I kind of have it laid out in my head, and I don't know exactly how this will work out, is using perforated paper for the first kit and learning how to use that, and then moving on to, Millhill also makes kits that use Ada, so teach how to work on fabric, and on that I can teach needle parking and how to stitch on the diagonal. And then the third one, I'm not quite sure about, but it would be nice to do something with like an even weave or linen and teach how to manage that. So kind of a series of videos. The end part of it isn't really solid in my brain yet, but especially the first one really is starting to gel. And I really think that I can walk people through from the very beginning of how to sort your floss, what 6-stranded floss is, all of that. I can walk viewers through, or new stitchers through, and teach them how to stitch. And all of those things that most of us learned just through trial and error, since most of us are self-taught, and all of the skills that it took us years to figure out, I can just put them all into this video series so that the learning curve will be a lot shorter for new stitchers. So we'll see what happens, but I really like this idea. I guess I had to resign from my teaching job, so I guess my teaching my teaching brain is really kicking in and is like, yay, I can teach something. So anyways, if you are looking for a present for a family member, keep an eye on my channel. You can subscribe and you know, do the usual, ring the bell, thumbs up, yada yada. But keep an eye on it, and I will have some videos hopefully in this coming week, maybe this weekend even. Starting to put this together, and we'll see what happens. But I think I can teach some beginning stitchers how to stitch pretty quickly. So I hope you come along with me on this newest version of my channel. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.